The Staircase by Hugh Walpole and read by Chris Halton. It doesn't matter in the least where this old house is. There were once many houses like it. Now there are very few. It was born in 1540. You can see the date of its birth over the lintel of the porch cut into the stone. It is E-shaped with central porch and wings at each end. Its stone is now, in its present age, weathered to a beautiful colour of pearl grey purple shadowed. This stone makes the house seem old, but it is not old. Its heart and veins are strong and vigorous. Only its clothes now are shabby. It is a small house as Tudor manor houses go, but its masonry is very solid, and it was created by a spirit who cared that it should have every grace of proportion and strength. The wings have angled buttresses and the porch rises to twisted terminals. There are twisted terminals with cupola tops also upon the gables, and the chimneys too are twisted. The mullioned windows have arched heads, and the porch has a Tudor arch. The arch is an entrance to a little quadrangle, and there are rooms above and gables on either side. Here and there is rich carving very fancifully designed. It is set upon a little hill, and the lawn runs down to a small formal garden with box hedges mounted by animals fancifully cut, a sundial, a little stone temple. Fields spread on either side of it and are bordered completely by a green tangled wood. The trees climb skywards on every side, but they are not too close about the house. They are too friendly to it to hurt it in any way. Over the arched porch a very amiable gargoyle hangs his head. He has one eye closed and a protruding chin from which the rain drips on a wet day, and in the winter icicles hang from it. All the country about the house is very English, and the villages have names like Croxton, Little Pudding, Big Pudding, Englehart and Applewain. A stream runs at the end of the lower field, runs through the wood, under the road, by other fields, so far as Bonnet, where it becomes a river and broadens under bridges at Peckwit, the country town. The house is called Candle Place and is very proud of its name. Its history for the last 100 years has been very private and personal. No one save myself and the house knows the real crises of its history, just as no one knows the real crisis of your history save yourself. You have doubtless been often surprised that neighbours think that such and such events have been the dramatic changing moments in your life, as when you lost your wife or your money or had scarlet fever, when in reality it was the blowing of a window curtain, the buying of a ship in silver, or the cry of a child on the stair. So it has been with this house, which has had its heart wrung by the breaking of a bough in the wind, a spark flying from the chimney, or a mouse scratching in the wainscot. From its birth it has had its own pride, its own reserve, its own consequence. Everything that has happened in it, every person who has come to it or gone from it, every song that has been sung in it, every oath sworn in it, every shout, every cry, every prayer, every yawn has found a place in its history. Its heart has been always kindly, hospitable, generous. It has had as many intentions as we have all had towards noble ends and fine charities. But life is not so easy as that. Its first days were full of light and colour. Of course, it was always a small house. Sir Mortimer Candle, who helped to create it, loved it, and the house gave him its heart. The house knew that he did for it what he could with his means. The house suffered with him when his first wife died of the plague, rejoiced with him when he married again so beautiful a lady, suffered with him once more when the beautiful lady ran away to Spain with a rascal. There is a little room, the priest's room, where Sir Mortimer shut himself in and cried one long summer day his heart away. When he came out of there he had no heart any more, and the house, the only witness of that scene, put its arms about him, loved him more dearly than it had ever done, and mourned him most bitterly when he died. The house after that had a very especial tenderness for the priest's room, which was first hung with green tapestry, and then had dark panelling, and then was whitewashed, and then had a Morris wallpaper, and then discovered its dark panelling again, changing its clothes but never forgetting anything. But the house was never a sentimental weakling. It was rather ironic in spirit because of the human nature that it saw and the vanity of all human wishes. As to this business of human wishes and desires, the house has never understood them, having a longer vision and a quieter, more tranquil heart. After the experience that it has had of these strange, pathetic, obstinate, impulsive, short-sighted beings, it has decided perhaps that they are bent on self-ruin and seem to wish for that. This has given the house an air of rather chuckling tenderness. Considering such oddities, its chin in its hand and the wood gathering round to listen whether there should be anything worth listening to, for the house when it likes is a good storyteller, the eye of its mind goes back to a number of puzzling incidents, and most puzzling of all, to the story of Edmund Candle and his lady Dorothy, the events of a close summer evening in 1815, the very day that the house and its inhabitants had the news of Waterloo. Sir Edmund Candle was a very restless travelling gentleman, and all the trouble began with that. The house could never understand what pleasure he found in all these tiresome foreign tours that he prosecuted when there was the lovely English country for him to spend his days in. His wife Dorothy could not understand this either. There was a kind of fated air about them from the moment of their marriage. The house noticed it on their very wedding day, and the priest's room murmured to the parlour, "Here's an odd pair," and the staircase whispered to the little dark hall with the family pictures, "This doesn't look too well," and the powder closet repeated to the yellow bedroom, "No, this doesn't look well at all." They had, of course, all known Edmund from his birth. He was a swarthy, broad-shouldered baby, unusually long in the leg, and from the very beginning he was known for his tender heart and his obstinate will. These two qualities made him very silent. His tender heart caused him to be afraid of giving himself away. His obstinate will made him close his mouth and jut out his chin, so that nobody could possibly say that his resolve showed signs of weakening. He had a sister, Henrietta, who was the cause of all the later trouble. The house never from the beginning liked Henrietta. It considered that always she had been of a sly, mean, greedy disposition. There is nothing like a house for discovering whether people are mean or greedy. Chests of drawers, open fireplaces, chairs and tables, staircases and powder closets, these are the wise recipients of impressions whose confidence and knowledge you can shake neither by lies nor arrogances. The house was willing to grant that Henrietta loved her brother, but in a mean, grasping, greedy manner, and jealousy was her other name. They were children of a late marriage, and their parents died of the smallpox when Edmund was 19 and Henrietta 21. After that, Henrietta ruled the house because Edmund was scarcely ever there, and the house disliked exceedingly her rule. This house was, as I have said, a loyal and faithful friend and servant of the Candle family. Some houses are always hostile to their owners, having a great unreasoning pride of their own, and considering the persons who inhabit them altogether unworthy of their good fortune. But partly for the sake of Sir Mortimer, who had created and loved it, and partly because it was by nature kindly, and partly because it always hoped for the best, the house had always chosen only the finest traits in the Candle character, and refused to look at any other. But if there is one thing that a house resents, it is to be shabbily and meanly treated. When a carpet is worn, a window rattling in the breeze, a pipe in rebellion, a chair on the wobble, the house does everything towards drawing the attention of its master. This house had been always wonderfully considerate of expense and the costliness of all repair. It knew that its masters were not men of great wealth, and must go warily with their purposes, but until Henrietta, the Candles had been generous within their powers. They had had a pride in the house which made them glad to be generous. Henrietta had no such pride. She persisted in what she called an adequate economy, declaring that it was her duty to her brother who drove her. But as the house, who was never deceived about anything, very well knew, this so-called economy became her god, and to save money her sensual passion. She grew into a long bony woman with a faint moustache on her upper lip, and a strange, heavy, flat-footed way of walking. The staircase, a little conceited perhaps because of its lovely banisters that were as delicate as lace, hated her tread, and declared that she was so common that she could not be a Candil. Several times the staircase tripped her up out of sheer maliciousness. The storeroom hated her more than did in any other part of the house. Every morning she was there, skimping and cheese-paring, making this last and doing without that, wondering whether this were not too expensive and that too outrageous. Of course, her maidservants would not stay with her. She found it cheapest to engage little charity girls, and when she had them, she starved them. It is true that she also starved herself, but that was no virtue. The house would see the little charity girls crying from sheer hunger in their beds, and its heart would ache for them. This was, of course, to some degree different when Edmund came home from his travels, but not very different because he was always considerably under his sister's influence. He was soft-hearted and she was hard, and as the house very well knew, the hard ones always win. Henrietta loved her brother, but she was also afraid of him. She was very proud of him, but yet more proud of her domination over him. When he was 30 and she 32, she was convinced that he would never marry. It had been once her terror that he should, and she would lie awake thinking one moment of the household accounts and the next of wicked girls who might entrap her brother. But it seemed that he was never in love. He returned from every travel as virgin as before. She said to him one morning, smiling her rather grim smile, "Well, brother, you are a bachelor for life, I think." It was then that he told her that he was shortly to marry Miss Dorothy Preston of Cathwick Hall. He spoke very quietly, but as the armchair in the Adam room noticed, he was not quite at his ease. They were speaking in the Adam room at the time, and this armchair had only recently been purchased by Edmund Candil. The room was not known then as the Adam room, and it had that title later, but it was the room of Edmund's heart. The fireplace was in the Adam style, and so were the ceiling, and the furniture, the chairs, the table, the sofa, the commode Edmund had had made for him in London. Very lovely they were, of satin wood and mahogany, with their general effect of straight line, but modified by lovely curves, delicate and shining. In the centre of the commode was a painted vase of flowers, on the ceiling a heavenly tracing of shell-like circles. Everywhere grace and strength and the harmony of perfect workmanship. This room was for Edmund, the heart of England, and he would stand in it, his dark eyes glowing, fingering his stock, slapping his tight thigh with his riding whip, a glory at his heart. Many things he had brought with him from foreign countries. There was the Chinese room, and the little dining room was decorated with Italian pictures. In his own room that he called the library, there was an inkhorn that had been, they said, Mirabeau's, a letter of Marie Antoinette's, a yellow lock cut from the hair of a mermaid, and some of the feathers from the headdress of an African chieftain. Many more treasures than these. But it was the parlour with the fine furniture bought by him in London that was England, and it was of this room that he thought when he was tossing on the Bay of Biscay, or studying pictures in Florence, or watching the ablutions of natives in the sacred river. It was in this room that he told his sister that he intended marriage. She made no protest. She knew well enough when her brother's mind was made up. But it was a sunny morning when he told her, and as the sun, having embraced merrily the box-hedge peacocks and griffins, looked in to wish good morning to the sofa and the round shining satin wood table that balanced itself so beautifully on its slim delicate legs, it could tell that the table and chairs were delighted about something. "What is it?" said the sun, rubbing its chin on the window-sill. "There's a new mistress coming," said the table and chairs. And when she came, they all fell at once in love with her. Was there ever anyone so charming and delicate in her primrose-coloured gown, her pretty straw bonnet and the grey silk scarf about her shoulders? Was there ever anyone so charming? Of course Henrietta did not think so. This is an old story, this one of the family relations greeting so suspiciously the new young bride. But it is always actual enough in its tragedy and heartbreak. however often it may have happened before? Is it sentimental to be sorry because the new Lady Candle was sad and lonely and cried softly for hours at night while her husband slept beside her? At that time, at least, the house did not think so. Possibly by now it has grown more cynical. It cannot, any more than the humans who inhabit it, altogether be unaware of the feeling and colour of its time. In any case, the house loved Dorothy Candle and was deeply grieved at her trouble. That trouble was, one must realise, partly of her own making. Her husband loved her, nay, he adored her with all the tenderness and tenacity that were part of his character. He adored her and was bored by her. As everyone knows, this is a most aggravating state of feeling. He thought her beautiful, good, amiable and honest, but he had nothing at all to say to her. For many a man she would have been exactly fitting, for it was not so much that she was stupid as that she had no education and no experience. He gave her none of these things as he should have done, nor did he realize that this life in the depths of English country, removed from all the enterprise and movement of the town, removed also by the weather from any outside intercourse for weeks at a time, was for someone without any great resources in herself depressing and enervating. And then she was frightened of him. How well the house understood this! It too was at times afraid of him, of his silences, his obstinacy and easy capacity of semi-liveliness, a sensitiveness that his reticence forbade him to express. How often in the months that followed the marriage did the house long to advise her as to her treatment of him? The sofa in the parlour was especially wise in such cases. Long before it had been covered with its gay cherry-coloured silk, it had been famous among friends and neighbours for its delicacy in human tactics. There came a morning when Lady Candle sat on a corner of it. Her lovely little hand, she was delicate, slim, fragile, her body had the consistency of eggshell china, clenching the shining wood of its strong arm for support, and a word from her would have put everything right. The sofa could feel the throbbing of her heart, and looking across to the thick, stiff, obstinate body of her husband, longed to throw her into his arms. But she could not say the word, and the mischance moment became history for both of them. Had they not loved so truly, it might have been easier for them. As it was, shyness and obstinacy built the barrier. And of course Henrietta assisted. How grimly was she pleased as she sat in her ugly old russet gown, pretending to read Lord Clarendon's history, for she made a great pretence of improving her mind, but in reality listening to the unhappy silences between them and watching for the occasion when a word from her to her brother would skilfully widen the breach. For she hated poor Dorothy. She must in any case have done so out of jealousy and disappointment, but Dorothy was also precisely the example in woman whom she most despised. A weak, feckless, helpless thing whose pretty looks were an insult. Then Dorothy felt her peril and rose to meet it. The house may have whispered in her ear. Yes, she rose to meet it, but as life only too emphatically teaches us, it is no good crying for the moon, and it is no good, however urgent we may be, begging for qualities that we have not got. She had a terrible habit of being affectionate at the wrong time. A kind of fate pursued her in this. He would return from his afternoon's ride, pleasantly weary, eager for his wife and happy in the thought of a little romantic dalliance, and she, fancying that he would not be disturbed, would leave him to snore beside the fire. Or a neighbour squire would visit him, and he be off with him for the afternoon, and she feel neglected. Or he would be absorbed in a newsletter with a lively account of French affairs, and she choose that moment to sit on his knee and tug his hair. Dorothy was in truth one of those unfortunate persons, and they are among the most unfortunate in the world, who are insensitive to the moods and atmospheres of others. These err not through egotism nor stupidity, but rather through a sort of colour blindness, so that they see their friend red when he is yellow and green when he is blue. Neither Dorothy nor Edmund had any gift of words, so a year and a half after his marriage Edmund, with an ache in his heart, although he would own this to nobody, went once again to foreign part. The house implored him not to go. He almost heard its protests. On one of his last evenings there, a windy spring evening, he came in from a dark twilight walk, splashed with the mud of the country paths, the sense of the pale hedgerow primroses yet in his eye, the chatter of birds in his ear, and standing in the hall heard the William and Mary clock with the moon and stars, the banisters of the staircase, the curtains of the long hall window whisper to him, "Don't go, don't go, don't go." He stood there and thought, "By Gemini, I'll not leave this." Dorothy came down the stairs to greet him, and, seeing him lost in thought, stole upstairs again. In any case, he had taken his seat in the coach, and his place in the packet-boat was got for him by a friend in London. "Don't go," said the portrait of old Uncle Candle. He strode upstairs, and Dorothy was reading Grandison by the fire, and although her heart was beating with love for him, was too timid to say so. So to foreign parts he went again, and, loving her so dearly, wrote letters to her which he tore up without sending, lest she should think him foolish, such being the British temperament. How the house suffered then that Dorothy should be left to the harsh economies of sister Henrietta. Henrietta was not a bad woman, but she was mean, selfish, proud and stupid. She was also jealous. Very quickly and with little show of rebellion, Dorothy submitted to her ways. If true love is in question, absence does indeed make the heart grow fonder, and Dorothy thought of her husband night, morning and night again. She was snubbed, starved, and given a thorough sense of her insufficiencies. It is surprising how completely one human being can convince another of incompetence, ignorance, and silly vanity, if they be often alone together, and one of them a woman. Women are more whole-hearted than men in what they do, whether for good or ill, and Henrietta was very whole-hearted indeed in this affair. She convinced Dorothy before her husband's return that she was quite unworthy of his love, that he found her dull and unresponsive, that he was deeply disappointed in the issue of his marriage, and that she had deceived him most basely. You may say that she was a poor-spirited little thing, but she was very lonely, half-starved, and her love made her defenceless. The appetite grows with what it feeds on, and Henrietta found that educating Dorothy, as she called it, was a very worthy and soul-satisfying occupation. Dorothy began to be frightened, not only of herself and of Henrietta, but of everything around her, the house, the gardens, the surrounding country. The house did its utmost to reassure her. When she lay awake in her bed at night, the house would hush any noise that might disturb her. The furniture of her room, the hangings above her bed, the old chest of Cromwell's time, the Queen Anne wardrobe, the warming pan, the fire-irons that had the heads of grinning dogs, the yellow rug from Turkey, the Italian lamp beside her bed, they all crowded about her to tell her that they loved her. After a while she was conscious of their affection. Her bedroom and the parlour were for her the happiest places in the house, the only places indeed where she was not afraid. She did not know that they were saying anything to her. She had not that kind of perception, but she felt reassured by them, and she would lock herself into her bedroom and sit there for hours thinking of her husband and wondering where he might be. She became so painfully aware of Henrietta that she saw her when she wasn't there. She saw her always just around a corner behind a tree on the other side of the rose garden wall, peering over the sundial, hiding behind the curtain. She became a slave to her, doing all that she was told, going where she was bid. The house considered it a disgusting business. One evening she broke into a flash of rebellion. "Edmund loves me," she cried, her little breast panting, her small hands clenched. "And you hate me. Why do you hate me? I have never done you any harm." Henrietta looked at her severely. "Hate, hate, I have other things to do, and if he loves you, why does he stay so long away?" "Ah, why indeed?" The house echoed the question, the very floors trembling with agitation. The stupid fool! Could he not see the treasure that he had? Did he think that such glories were to be picked up anywhere, any day, for the asking? The fire spat a piece of coal onto the hearthrug in contempt of human blindness. When the time arrived at last for Edmund's return, Dorothy was in a fitting condition of miserable humility. Edmund did not love her. He was bored with her too dreadfully. But indeed, how could he love her? How could anybody love her, poor, incompetent, stupid thing that she was? And yet in her heart she knew that she was not so stupid. Did Edmund love her only a little, she could jump all the barriers and be really rather brilliant. Much more brilliant than Henrietta, who was certainly not brilliant at all. It was this terrible shyness that held her back, that and Henrietta's assurance that Edmund did not love her. And indeed he did not seem to. It was but too likely that Henrietta was right. As the time approached for Edmund's return, Henrietta was in a fine bustle, and the house was in one too. The house smiled contemptuously at Henrietta's parsimonious attempts to freshen it up, as though the house could not do that a great deal better than Henrietta ever could. Beeswaxing the floors, rubbing the furniture, shining up the silver, what were these little superficialities compared with the inner spiritual shake that the house gave itself when it wanted to? A sort of glow stole over windows, stairs and hall. A silver shine, a richer colour, crept into the amber curtains, the cherry-coloured sofa. The faces in the portraits smiled. The fire-irons glittered. The mahogany shone again. Edmund had been away too long. The house would not let him go so easily next time. The night before his return, Dorothy did not sleep, but lay there, her eyes burning, her heart thickly beating, determining on the bold, demonstrative person she would be. She would show Henrietta whether he loved her or no. But at the thought of Henrietta she shivered and drew the bedclothes closely about her. She seemed to be standing beside the bed, illumined in the darkness by her own malignant fires, her yellow skin drawn tightly across the supercilious bones, her hands curving over some fresh mean economy, her ridiculous headdress wagging like a mocking spirit above her small red-rimmed eyes. Yes, if only Henrietta were not there. And the old chest murmured softly, if only Henrietta were not there. The post-chaise came up to the door darkly like a ghost, for it had been snowing all day and the house was wrapped in silence. The animals on the box-tree hedge stood out fantastically against the silver grey of the evening sky, and the snow fell like the scattering feathers of a heavenly geese flock. Edmund stepped into the hall and had Dorothy in his arms. At that moment they knew how truly they loved one another. He wondered as he flung his mind back in an instant's retrospect over a phantasmagoria of Indian moguls, Chinese rivers, and the flaming sunsets of Arabia. How it could be that he had not known that his life was here, here with his beloved house above him, his adored wife in his arms. His head up like a conqueror's, he mounted the stairs, almost running into his wonderful parlour, to see once again the vase of flowers on the commode, the slender beautiful legs of his chair, the charming circles of his delicate ceiling. How could I have stayed away, he thought. I will never leave this again. And that night, clasped in one another's arms, they discovered one another again. Shyness fled and heart was open to heart. Nevertheless, there remained Henrietta. Would you believe that one yellow-faced old maid could direct and dominate two normal, healthy creatures? You know that she can, and is doing it somewhere or other at this very moment, and all for their good. No one ever did anything mean to anyone else yet save for their good, and so it will be until the end of this frail planet. She told Edmund that she had been educating Dorothy. He would find her greatly improved. She feared that her worst fault was hardness of heart. Hardness of heart, a sad defect. During those snowy days, Henrietta tried to show her brother that no one in the world truly loved him but herself. She had shown him this before and found the task easy. Now it was more difficult. Dorothy's shyness had been melted by this renewed contact. He could not doubt the evidence of his eyes and the many little unconscious things that spoke for her when she had no idea that they were speaking. Now they rode and walked together, and he explained to her how he was, how that at a time his thoughts would be far, far away in Cairo or Ispahan, and that she must not think that he did not care for her because he was dreaming, and she told him that when he had frightened her she had been stupid, but that now that he frightened her no longer, she would soon be brilliant. So Henrietta's task was difficult. And then in the spring, when the daffodils blew among the long grasses and the white violets were shining in the copse, a chance word of hers showed her the way. She hated Dorothy now because she suspected that Dorothy was planning to be rid of her. The fear that she would be turned out of the house never left her, and so, as fear always does, it drove her to baser things than belonged truly to her nature. She hinted that in Edmund's absence Dorothy had found a neighbouring squire good company, and there had been perhaps another or two men. At that word, every frustrated instinct in Henrietta's body turned in rebellion. She had not spoken before she believed it true. She had this imaginative gift common to lonely persons. She was herself amazed at the effect of her words on Edmund. If she had ever doubted Edmund's love for his wife, and she had not really doubted it, she was certain of the truth at last. Dorothy. Dorothy. His stout body trembled. His eyes were wounded. He turned from his sister as though he were ashamed both of her and of himself. After that there was no peace. It was now that the house wondered most deeply at these strange human beings, the little things that upset them, the odd things that at a moment they would believe. Here, for instance, was their Edmund, whom they so truly admired, loving his Dorothy and entirely trusting her. Now, at a moment's word from a sour-faced virgin, there is a fire of torment in his heart. He looks on every male with an eager, restless suspicion. While attempting to appear natural, he watches Dorothy at every corner and counters in his mind her lightest word. "Why," said the Italian lamp, which from its nationality knew everything about jealousy, to the Cromwellian chest, "I have never known so foolish a suspicion," to which the Cromwellian chest replied in its best roundhead manner, "Woman, the devil's bait, always has been, always will be." He attacked his sister again and again. "With whom has she been? Has she ever stayed from the house a night? What friends has she made?" To which Henrietta would indignantly reply, "Brother, brother, what are you about? This jealousy is most unbecoming. I have suggested no impropriety, only a little foolishness born of idleness." But it did not need time for Dorothy to discover that something was once again terribly amiss. This strange husband of hers, so unable to express himself, she had but just won him back to her, and now he was away again. With the courage born of their new relationship, she asked him what was the trouble, and he told her nothing, nothing at all. Why should there be trouble? You are forever imagining. And then looked at her so strangely that she blushed and turned away as though she were indeed guilty. Guilty of what? She had not the least idea. But what she did know was that it was dear sister Henrietta who was responsible, and now, as May came with a flourish of birds and blossom and starlit nights, she began to hate Henrietta with an intensity quite new to her gentle nature. So with jealousy and hatred alive and burning, the house grew very sad. It hated these evil passions, and had said long ago that they ruined with their silly bitterness every good house in the world. The little Chinese cabinet with the purple dragons on its doors said that in China everything was much simpler. You did not drag a situation to infinity as these sluggish English do, but simply called death in to make a settlement, a much simpler way. In any case, the house began to watch and to listen with the certainty that the moment was approaching when it must interfere. Jealousy always heightens love, and so, if Edmund had loved Dorothy at the first, that cool, placid anticipation was nothing to the fevered passion which he now felt. When he was away from her, he longed to have her in his arms, covering her with kisses and assuring her that he had never doubted her, and when he was with her, he suspected her every look, her every word. And she, miserable now and angry and ill, could not tell what possessed him, her virtue being so secure that she could not conceive that anyone should suspect it. Only she was well aware that Henrietta was to blame. These were also days of national anxiety and unrest, the days when Napoleon, jumping from Elba, alighted in France and for a moment promised to stay there. Warm, stuffy, breathless days when everyone was waiting, the house with the rest. On the staircase one summer evening, Dorothy told Henrietta something of her mind. "If I had my way," she ended in a shaking rage, "you would not be here plotting against us." So that was it. At last, Henrietta's suspicions were confirmed. In a short while Dorothy would have her out of the house, and then where would she go? The thought of her desolation, loneliness, loss of power gripped her heart like a cat's claws. The two little charity girls had a time of it during those weeks, and cried themselves to sleep in their attic that smelt of mice and apples, dreaming afterwards of strong lovers who beat their mistress into a pulp. "Give me proof," said Edmund, so bitterly tormented. "If it is true, give me proof." And Henrietta answered sulkily, "I have never said anything," and a window sash fell on his fingers and bruised them just to teach him not to be so damnable a fool. Nevertheless, Henrietta had her proof. She had been cherishing it for a year at least. This was a letter written by a young naval lieutenant, cousin of a neighbouring squire, after he had danced with Dorothy at a Christmas ball. It was only a happy, careless boy's letter, he in love with Dorothy's freshness, and because he was never more than a moment in any one place, careless of consequences. He said in his letter that she was the most beautiful of God's creatures, that he would dream of her at sea and the rest. Dorothy kept it. Henrietta stole it. The day came when the coach brought the news of the Waterloo victory. On that summer evening, rockets were breaking into the pale sky above the dark soft shelter of the wood. On Bendon Hill they were waiting for dark to light the bonfire. You could hear the shouting and singing from the high road. The happiness at the victory and the sense that England was delivered blew some of the cobwebs from Edmund's brain. He took Dorothy into the garden, and there, behind the sundial, put his arms around her and kissed her. Henrietta, watching the rockets strike the sky from her window, saw them, and fear, malice, loneliness, greed, hurt pride and jealousy all rose in her together. She turned over the letter in her drawer and vowed that her brother should not go to bed that night before he had heard of it. "Look out! Look out!" cried her room to the rest of the house. "She will make mischief with the letter. We must prevent her." "She has done mischief enough," chattered the clock from the hall. "She must be prevented," whistled the chimneys. "Something must be done, and at once. But how? By whom? She is coming." She stands outside her door, glancing about the dim sunset passage. The picture of Ranelagh above her head wonders, shall it fall on her? The chairs along the passage watch her anxiously as she passes them. But what can they do? Each must obey his own laws. Stop her! Stop her! Stop her! Edmund and Dorothy are coming in from the garden. The sun is sinking, the shadows lengthening across the lawn. One touch on his arm. "Brother, may I have a word?" And all the harm is done, misery and distress, unhappiness in the house, separation and loneliness. Stop her! Stop her! All the house is quivering with agitation. The curtains are blowing, the chimneys are twisting, the tables and chairs are creaking. Stop her! Stop her! Stop her! The order has gone out. She is standing now at the head of the staircase leading to the hall. She waits, her head bent a little, listening. Something seems to warn her. Edmund and Dorothy are coming in from the garden. The fireworks are beginning beyond the wood, and their gold and crimson showers are rivaling the stars. Henrietta, nodding her head as though in certainty, has taken her step. Some roughness in the wood has caught her heel. Was it there a moment ago? She stumbles, she clutches at the balustrade, but it is slippery and refuses to aid her. She is falling, her feet are away in air, her head strikes the board, she screams once and then again, a rush, a flash of huddled colour, and her head has struck the stone of the hall floor. How odd a silence followed. Dorothy and Edmund were still a moment lingering by the door, looking back to the shower of golden stars, hearing the happy voices singing in the road. Henrietta was dead, and so made no sound. But all through the house there was a strange humming, as though everything from top to bottom were whispering. Everything in the house is moving save the woman at the bottom of the stairs. The end.